It's a new industrial revolution.
This is a historic moment. Internet, mobile, and now AI. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang said the next industrial revolution has begun. Who will be the winners?
Well, come talk to our 70 customers. They think they're winning.
Palantir Stock, a fired up wealth favorite, is being added to the S&P 500 September 23rd. Is Palantir a buy, a hold, or a sell? So a total of 6 changes here. Palantir, Dell, and Erie Insurance are being added to the S&P 500. The deletions include American Airlines, Etsy, and Bio-Rad. Now, in the past 5 days, the stock ripped off this news. You can see it's up 12.52% when the market's really been selling off and quite volatile over that time. Year to date, the stock is up 107%. Over the past year, 117%, and over the past 5 years, 273%. Now, what does Dan Ives think? Of course, take this with a grain of salt. He is a permabull, but he says this was a moment that Palantir investors have been anxiously waiting for over the past year, as the profitability profile of this story has significantly been bolstered with another validation moment for the Palantir story. We believe many skeptics of Palantir have underestimated the profitability and cash flow potential of this name with AIP. Of course, if you follow this channel, AIP is Artificial Intelligence Platform, and Palantir is part of what we call Phase 2 for enterprise generative AI. Phase 1 is the infrastructure. Phase 2 is taking the infrastructure of the LLMs and making use of those LLMs with corporate data. Ives is saying he believes this is the beginning of a multi-year cycle for Palantir, which will continue generating significant deal flow on the back of AIP. Of course, you know that I'm bullish on Palantir as well, but when you're talking about buying or trimming, valuation does matter. So we're going to look at valuation later. I want to go through a few things that are important to understand where Palantir just might go. Now, what's really interesting about this, if you look at 1995 to 1999, an inclusion outperformed the index by 8.3 percentage points. But as you can see, this has diminished over time to the point where it's basically flat. Now, with that said, specific stocks, especially cult stocks that have a strong retail following, it's a different story. And Tesla was a great example. It's important to note here that Ives has an outperform on Palantir with a price target of $38. And this is just from a few days ago, and it says it remains the street high. Well, hold your horses, because Bank of America has come to town with a new street high, raising their price target from $30 to $50 per share. Bank of America calls this a watershed moment and anticipates more institutional investors. Now, why would there be a jump in more institutional investors? The reason is when a stock is added to the S&P 500, it tends to see a jump in the share price, but the reason is simple. The S&P 500 index fund managers must now all buy the stock, which raises interest and helps push the stock price higher. And as you know, Palantir ripped over 13% in one trading session on this news. Again, though, a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's already a retail name. It's a favorite among individual investors like me and you. In fact, I had multiple texts from friends and family saying, hey, should I buy Palantir here at $30, $34 a share because it's going in the S&P 500? Is it going to go higher? This is helpful. Let's look at some history here. Tesla. So it was included in the S&P 500 December 21st, 2020. Tesla stock ripped into this news. So you can see December 2020 it was a $235 stock. Rewind a year earlier, December 2019, it was a $27 stock. So it ripped from that $235 on the inclusion date. After a little bit of a sell-off, it ripped all the way up here November 2021. It was a $381 stock. It dropped from $381 all the way down to $123 basically a year later. So look at this one more time. December of 2019, $27.89. A year later, $235. Around another year later, $381. And then a year after that, $123. And it closed last December 2023 at $248. And today it's $223. Now it's still up 1,265% in the past 5 years. But when you bought the stock, it matters a lot. Now, as you know, with cloud and SaaS companies, we like to look at specific metrics to compare those companies to their peers. So that EV/NTM revenue, which you're familiar with if you watch this channel, for Palantir, it's just under a 25x. Now, that's the highest for any cloud SaaS name. In fact, the second highest is the Trade Desk, which you might not generally put in this cloud SaaS arena, and that's trading at an 18x EV/NTM revenue. Next is Samsara. the ticker is IoT, 17.3x, Cloudflare, 14.1x, ServiceNow, 13.6x, CrowdStrike, 13.4, Datadog, 12.2, and Zscaler only 8.6x on the EV/NCM revenue. So Palantir is the king of that list and the most expensive stock. For a number of years, for 2 years or so, it was Snowflake, and then of course CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike lost its crown because of the outage. Now the free cash flow percentage for Palantir is 28%, which is a solid number. Rule of 40, which you want over 40, is a 49%, which is good. And that net dollar retention is 114%. When you look at profitability, it rocks an A- on Seeking Alpha. Now, because it's software and it's software as a service, it does have that high gross profit margin, 81.39%. And the growth is solid around 20%, not magnificent growth, but solid growth. Somebody asked me in Discord today, is Palantir a spec stock or a growth stock? Well, it's profitable. It's headed into the S&P 500. So it's definitely not in the spec arena, not really in the hyper growth arena, because 20% wouldn't be hyper growth. So this is more of just a regular growth. You think of that spectrum from spec to hyper growth, growth to mature growth. This would be in the growth area. Now, valuation, we talked about those cloud metrics, but on Seeking Alpha, we'll look at those standard metrics. So that forward PE gap is 187, which of course is expensive. And the forward price to sales is a 28.22, very expensive. Now I want to come on here and I want to tell you, hey, Palantir is going to go to $50 next week, buy a bunch more shares. I really want to tell you that, but the thing is that's just not reality. Now the market does crazy things both directions, and stocks go way higher than they should in the upside, and they go lower than you think they will on the downside. Now, of course, you never want to buy off analyst price targets. We already talked about a $38 and a $50 price target. Let's look at some additional price targets here on tip rings. So the highest price target is at Bank of America, $50. The lowest is $9. The average is $27.08. It's trading at 34 right now. So that represents a 21.47% downside from here. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that it's going to drop 20%, but I think it's good for you as the investor to have this information. It shouldn't make you buy or sell just off those price targets. It gives you an idea of the sentiment. Now, if you're familiar with the PayPal mafia and Peter Thiel.
Bruh.
What can I say? Now, this is really interesting because if you're familiar with the PayPal mafia and Peter Thiel, being one of the large shareholders of Palantir, he's looking to sell $1 billion in the stock. This is according to Barron's. Initially made a disclosure in August via his investment vehicle, but essentially adopted a rule on May 15th that would allow for the sale of approximately 28.6 million shares of Palantir by December 31st, 2025. So it doesn't mean it necessarily has to happen or this many shares have to sell, but it's a possibility. And I always love the comments because mostly they're entertainment, to be honest. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I really enjoy reading these comments. Something good information sometimes, but most of the time it's just raw entertainment for me. A non-event. Okay, so selling $1 billion non-event. I mean, obviously the guy has a lot of money and you might say $1 billion, not a big deal. Just like you have a retirement pension or 401k, people trying to explain. Now, generally people that are going to write stuff like this, they're the ones that own a ton of shares. And they're basically completely blinded, thinking that the stock's just going to go up every day for the rest of their lives and it's going to make them rich. I try to do my best to bring information to you guys in a neutral manner and not be biased and not just say, yeah, I'm a bull on this, so it's going to go up forever. Here's the deal. I'm going to tell you my thoughts here in a second of what I think. But first, let's look at a chart. I'll show you some possibilities, and then I'll share the commentary of what I'm going to do with the shares that I own. When I was in Hawaii, I did a video and I said, hey, NVDA and Palantir, their buys now at these levels. Now I got some heat on that. Palantir at the time was in the low 20s and now it's $34 a share. I said, broke 23, look for 25, 27, and 30. And now we're sitting almost at $35 a share. Now the R2 on this is $35.96 and the R3 is all the way up here at $40.51. And what's crazy about it, in early August when we had that sell-off, it got down to $21.23. So this has ripped $14 in about a month. The moment of truth. Is Palantir stock a buy, a trim, or just sell it all? So I own 1,000 shares in my main, that $2 million plus taxable brokerage. And I'm looking to sell 200 shares, just trim it. So I'm going to keep 800 shares. I'm going to trim 200 shares at $37.77. Now, I might adjust that price target, especially seeing that R340 and seeing price targets like $50 from Bank of America. But I do think somewhere in that $37 to $40, $41, you're probably going to see some resistance at some point and sell off. If you remember Tesla, when it went the S&P 500, had this huge run up and then it traded down. And eventually it'll probably happen with Palantir as well. If you're new here and want to be a better investor, smash that subscribe button. If this video is helpful, drop me a like, drop me a comment. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.